gets more of an audience. We've got a couple people showing up now, so awesome.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Power Hour. This is the second in our Power Hour series. So we're here to share a little bit of information with you about Prop S, what it will mean for our students and what it will mean for our community. And then we'll open the lines up for any questions that anyone might have or want to bring to us. So we really began to work on developing a plan to address our growing enrollment about a year and a half ago. Our board approved for us to bring Prop S to our voters in April. April 7th is the election date. Prop S will really help us to meet a variety of needs of our students in our school district. So a couple of the things that would be included in Prop S, first of all, is the addition of safe and secure entrances at North Glendale and the Kirkwood Early Childhood Center and Kirkwood High School. Also, adding the safe entrance at Kirkwood High School would be over on the Doherty Ferry side of the school and would allow for us to connect several ends of buildings on that campus so that students will be able to pass from class to class without actually having to go outside like they do now. Right now, when they go outside, the doors have to be unlocked at passing time and then relocked during class time. And so that will alleviate that need, except for going obviously to PE or over to the natatorium. We'll also be able to add 7 classrooms by doing that, utilizing the space where the current office is and above the new entrance center on the Doherty Ferry side of the campus. Also, we'd be able to construct a library and a gymnasium at Tillman. A lot of you might have seen the video that we have posted on our website about Prop S, and it's called the Tillman Shuffle. It kind of shows what it looks like at lunchtime in Tillman. Tillman students eat lunch in the gymnasium. And so at about 10:20, the partition has to be drawn across the gym, and then cafeteria tables are quickly moved in. So the students can eat lunch while students on the other side of the partition are still participating in PE classes. After going through all of the lunches, about 1:30 or so, the floors are cleaned up quickly, partition is drawn back, and classes are able to continue in the full gymnasium. The library right now over at Tillman is in the basement. It was not upgraded several years ago when some of our other schools had upgrades to their library spaces. Additionally, we'd be able to provide classroom spaces for Knifer Middle School. We would be able to add 4 classrooms and connect 2 halls that are currently not connected that would increase accessibility in that building. We would have North Kirkwood Middle School reclaim the office space where we're sitting right now at our Administrative Services Center. They have the potential of reclaiming 10 classrooms in this space. We know that our enrollment at North Kirkwood Middle School here will be increasing. Our offices would move into the current Huff building and on the 2nd floor of the facilities building, which is right now Pine Knifer Middle School. So we would be doing some renovation work in that building as well. And last but not least, I know what everyone has been hearing about is that we would be constructing an elementary school on the site that is currently at Doherty Ferry and Lindeman Roads. By adding another elementary school, we would have a total of 6 elementary schools. That would allow us to disperse students in our schools. If we were to do so today, we would have approximately 450 students at each part of our elementary schools. That's really a decent sized school, 450 students. Many of our schools were at this size not that many years ago, less than 10 years ago. A lot of our schools have increased by 100 students over that time. And so dispersing our students among 6 schools would also address the potential problems that we are seeing when we have to divide Tillman Elementary School students between 2 middle schools. Right now, the students at Tillman attend either Niver Middle School or North Middle School. And so having an extra elementary school could help us through redistricting to address that situation. And speaking of redistricting, obviously adding a school will call for redistricting, but in reality that work is probably due for our school district. We haven't redistricted here since 1982, when the North Huff building was closed. And if you are a student who attends Niver Middle School, or who lives in Niver Middle School, or behind Niver Middle School, or right next to Niver Middle School, you would be slotted to attend North Kirkley Middle School. And so there probably was a good reason for that at the time when our school lines were drawn. But it's probably time for us to take a look at where our students are, our attendance lines are drawn. So that work will be initiated probably this summer. We are forming a committee that will come together starting in May. And we will address the work of redistricting in our school district. And that would be whether progress passes or not at this point. So you're probably wondering, how can we fund all of these great things in our school district? So I'm going to ask Mike Romay, our CFO, who is here with us today, to talk a little bit about how could that be funded, Mike?
Thanks. Well, thanks for attending today. That's a great question. We have a great opportunity right now. We are paying off existing debt from bonds that were issued in 2010. So those bonds will be paid off soon, which is enabling us to be able to extend how much debt we have without increasing taxes. So right now, property owners pay, their tax rate includes a levy for operating expenses and also a levy to pay for debt. It's all within the same property tax bill that property tax owners pay. So we will be able to extend this debt without increasing anybody's taxes. In fact, taxes will go down. The debt service levy portion of the tax bill will decrease by 7 cents, which is a savings of $43 each year for the average homeowner. So that's great news. Bond interest rates are historically low right now. Right now, we can, if we were to issue the bonds today, on average, the interest rate would be 1.65%. So that's great news. It's half of the interest rate that we paid back when the 2010 bonds were issued. All this is a great news for our taxpayers and our community. We'll be able to issue these bonds and pay them off sooner than 20 years, likely in 17 years, and hopefully even sooner than that. So this is definitely a good time to be borrowing money, largely due to the interest rates. And we definitely have a need, facility needs that we have to address. And again, so this is a great opportunity to be able to do that.
So some of us might be wondering, how will this benefit some of the schools that won't actually receive any renovation or new building on their campuses? Schools like Kaiser and Robinson and Westchester. In reality, most of our schools, aside from Westchester, were built a long time ago, in the 1920s, 1930s. Westchester is our newest school, having been built in the 1950s, a good decade, but not the youngest of the decades. And so really, when we take a look at our schools, I know just from having entered my teaching career in 1981, schools have changed a lot, instruction has changed a lot, and the students who attend our schools have changed a lot. Back in 1981, we could have 34 students sitting in rows of desks in a classroom, and it was more of instruction from a lectern, more of the sage on the stage kind of instruction. But we've learned over the years that the most effective instruction is really one where kids are engaged in learning. We've also seen an increase in the diversity of students in our schools. We have more schools students who are being included in our classrooms that were not able to be included in classes in the 1980s. And so in order to accommodate the more diverse needs of our learners, we really need more space to do so. Good instruction includes things like using maker spaces and learning centers, small group instruction, and in order to be able to do that in a classroom space of say 600 square feet, class sizes really need to be kept at a level where those kinds of instructional strategies are effective. And those are strategies that are being used around the country and really around the world and have proven to be the most effective. And so we really owe it to our kids in Kirkwood, the Kirkwood School District. You know, our kids deserve the very best types of instruction, and having flexible spaces like that for our kids is really would provide an optimal learning environment for them.
Hi, I'm Ginger Casey, the Chief Communications Officer, and I'm moderating the Power Hour today. You'll notice on your screen you can ask questions. Those are anonymous, so feel free to ask any questions that you have. It's on the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them as we go through this Power Hour. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Condon and Mr. Romay.
So if you walk the halls of any of our, particularly our elementary schools right now, you'll see lots of that small group instruction happening in closets, former closets, under stairwells and hallways. And when you really think about the kids who are benefiting the most from small group instruction, for example, students who need to work on a very specific discrete reading skill, that happening in a hallway where other students are passing on their way to the gym, on their way to the restroom, is not the most optimal space for that small group instruction. So there are things going on. We are making do with the spaces that we have. But I do know that 2 of our elementary schools at this point are trying to find some really creative ways to find another classroom or 2, because their incoming kindergarten classes are larger than the 5th grade classes that are leaving. We need to keep our kindergarten classes smaller, around 20. And so we are looking down the line that if we don't provide more classroom spaces for our schools, of the potential of having to provide art and music, maybe on a cart, traveling into classrooms to deliver those services so that we can use those spaces for classroom spaces, or the potential of moving libraries into pods so that we can use libraries as classroom spaces. And I think our kids deserve better.
Hi, we have an anonymous question here, so I want to make sure that we address that. So that we need a little clarification on how many years bonds can be extended. So there's some misinformation out there about it's not every 10 years, is it, Mike? Is it?
Well, what we're doing is we're really extending our debt service levy by issuing new bonds. So we're currently paying off the bonds from 2010. So this, if Prop S passes, we'll be issuing new bonds. What's being extended is that debt service levy, which is currently it's 36 cents. It will drop 7 cents next year, even if Prop S passes. So we're issuing new debt and extending the debt service levy.
And districts typically are able to do this as if they have a need, facility need.
Yep, it's very common. This is really the primary and in some cases the only way for facilities to address their facility needs. So, or for schools to address their facility needs. So it's very common. All school districts, all but one school district in St. Louis County has a debt service levy, and pretty much all of them in the last 5 to 10 years have had a no tax increase bond issue to address their facility needs. So very common. Everybody does it. Again, it's really the primary and in most cases the only way to address facility needs for the school district.
But it's not, you can extend those bonds whenever the debt service allows you to. It's not every 10 years or every 15 years. It's just when there is a need.
It's when there's a need and also when there's an opportunity.
And is this Prop if Prop S does not pass, does anybody want to speak to what will happen at that point?
Well, at that point, we really need to regroup. The school board and the school district administrators really need to take a look at then, once that window of opportunity passes, what will be our bonding capacity and what direction do we want to take at that point. We're really asking our community members how they feel about building an elementary school on that piece of land that the district has owned since 1963. And we just need to listen to our community members to find out, is this the way we need to go? And if it isn't, if Prop S does not pass, then we just need to regroup, figure out what we're going to do to accommodate the enrollment growth, and make another plan.
We also have a question about redistricting. So one of the priorities that we've set out thus far is that keeping families together. So we have a question from a parent who has a child in the 5th grade as well as one in the second, or will have a child in the 5th grade and 2nd grade in the 22-23 school year, and was wondering, will they be split up if we redistrict?
Well, a lot of the priorities for redistricting will be determined by the group that's doing the work. So redistricting happens in school districts. Generally, it's a year-long process. And the reason it takes so long is that it's really important to hear from our community members, from our parents, what are your priorities? Are the priorities to keep families together? I think that we would all agree that it's important to keep families together. A lot of people may have other priorities, and that might mean maybe finishing a certain number of school years at the school that you're currently attending. And it will really be up to the group to decide what are the priorities and then how can we make those things work with a redistricting plan that may take over a 3-year period to fully implement.
Thank you. All right, we've answered all the questions right to date. So let's see if we have any more that come up here. But go ahead and maybe we can talk a little.
What if I talk about birth rates and projections?
Let's talk about projections.
I know Michelle touched on it a little bit, but our enrollment growth has happened over the last 10 to 12 years. We've grown each and every year, and it's not directly tied to live births. That's certainly a factor, but a lot of our growth has happened from move-ins, and you can see that just driving around Kirkwood and our surrounding communities with new homes that are being built, larger homes, and with that comes families and more children. So our growth is really based a lot on move-ins and people transferring into the district. We have a great school district, a great community. People want to live here, they want to go to school here, and so we are growing because of that. So when we look at, for example, our seniors right now that are at Kirkwood High School, when they began in kindergarten, their kindergarten cohort grew by roughly 100 kids, so between 20 and 25%. So that's kind of the growth that we see each and every year. Once our kids come here, we grow by 2 to 3% each year as they work their way through our system, and it's really attributed to additional families moving into our school district. And so our live birth, the projections are based on birth rates and those move-ins, and the projections are that we will continue to grow for the next 5 years. We don't do projections beyond 5 years because it all starts with kindergarten projections, and those kids haven't been born yet. So that's why we only project 5 years out. But again, all indications are that we will continue to grow over at least the next 5 years.
And I just want to point out to everybody, I have captured the screen for kirkwoodschools.org/Prop-S, and on that website, you'll see we have the enrollment projection study from Dr. Charles Coffran, who has conducted these studies pretty much for every district in St. Louis County. There's all kinds of other information on that website, as well as our own official enrollment report that was given this October by Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey just joined us, Assistant Superintendent for Student Data Services.
There you go, close enough.
Yeah.
So I apologize for coming in late. I had a different meeting that I had to stay in.
So a lot of what Mike Romay talked about just recently is also located on the October official enrollment report given by Dr. Bailey. All right. Also new and improved on the website, we added our tax rate calculator. So anybody who would like to go out there and Mike Romay, do you want to explain the tax rate calculator for us
Sure.
here?
All you have to do is enter one number into it, and it will show you what your home is assessed at. So homes are the value of your home. Ginger just keyed in an example of $325,000. So that's the value of the house. The assessed portion of the property is 19%. So a $325,000 home, the assessed taxes are assessed on roughly $62,000 of the property. And then when you apply the tax rate, the current property tax rate is $2,370 roughly. And then that would drop by, projected to drop $43 next year if Prop S passes. This is just the school portion of somebody's tax bill. The school district receives roughly anywhere from 55 to 60% of the property tax bill. There's a number of other taxing entities that receive the remaining portion of your tax bill. There's 10 to 12 different taxing entities. So, so this calculator is just the school portion of a residential property tax bill. But you can enter in your appraised value, and then it'll show you what you're paying now and what you're projected to pay next year.
Thank you. Also on the website is our frequently asked questions. So some of which you've asked today, we'll make sure that we add those to our frequently asked questions. And if you, we continue to add to this, so check back often if you have any more questions, the frequently asked questions. All right. We have more attendees, so maybe we can go back through. We've had some other people join us since we started. We'll go back through and introduce everyone. So,
Well, good afternoon again. I'm Michelle Condon, Superintendent in Kirkwood School District.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Romay, CFO for the district.
And hi, I'm Matt Bailey, Assistant Superintendent for Data Intervention and Support, and that covers student services, special programs.
and I'm Ginger Casey behind the screen serving as moderator.
So we're here talking today about Prop S and what it would mean for our students and our community members in our district. We often hear about the elementary school that Prop S would call to be built on the Lindeman-Doherty Ferry site, but there are lots of other changes that are really essential in many of our other schools, including safe and secure entrances to be added at the Kirkwood Early Childhood Center, North Glendale Elementary School, and Kirkwood High School. What do those entrances look like, Mike? What makes a safe and secure entrance different?
Well, what they do is it allows us to control all the visitors that come to the school. So when you enter the school, a visitor would not have direct access into the school without going into the main office first. So it forces them to first be buzzed into the school, and then forces them into the main office. And from there, they will greet a secretary or a receptionist. And then at that point, we have a system in all of our schools now called Raptor, which is a visitor management system that we use where we scan driver's licenses, does a quick background check on visitors, and if they need to enter into our school, then they're after that check has been done, then they're permitted to enter into the school. So creating those secured vestibules and then working in conjunction with the visitor management system, those are the improvements that we need in all of our schools.
I think the nice thing about where the secure entrance will be added at Kirkwood High School is that it really causes visitors to park on the Doherty Ferry parking lot and then go into an entrance there. Right now, visitors have to really walk halfway through the campus from either side of the campus parking lots to get to the main office. So this will really drive everyone to the Doherty Ferry side of the campus, enabling us to keep a better eye on the visitors to the school at that point. We talked a little bit about the gym and library at Tillman Elementary Schools and the Tillman Shuffle. If you haven't seen that video yet, it's kind of a fast forward look at what it looks like at Tillman from 10:30 to 1:30 during their lunches, when students have to eat lunch in the gymnasium, half the gymnasium, while the other half of the gymnasium is used for classes. I would imagine on French Toast Day that could be pretty interesting after lunches when you rejoin PE class.
We'll show that video again after, as we end the power hour this afternoon, because it is, while it is a true problem, it is always great to see the kids even trying to shuffle through lunch from 10:30 to 1:40. And why is that at some of our schools? We talk a lot about not adding on to some of our elementary schools right now. And I think that the reason why that wasn't chosen was because we cannot increase the capacity or the size of.
Yeah, we can add on to the schools and increase classroom space, but what we can't increase is the size of the cafeteria or the size of those common areas in our schools. Or so it just becomes difficult to continue to add on to our schools. And some of our schools, they don't have the land to be able to do it. For example, Kaiser Elementary is only 4.7 acres. The Lindemann property that we own is 13 acres, so there's much more space and room to be able to build a school and have a school. To continue to add on to a school like Kaiser is difficult. Not to mention the schools. Most of our elementary schools have been added on 4, 5, 6 times over the years, and that creates a problem with them just being able to continue to function. There's different levels at all the schools, steps, and to continue to add on to the schools is just not great. And again, we can't increase those common areas like gyms, libraries, those types of spaces.
Which is why lunches are held from 10:30 to 1:30 in our elementary schools right now, just to accommodate all of the students with the current sizes of the spaces available.
You want to cover the bond structure again, because we've got some additional people that have joined us that was not here for the no tax rate increase bond issue. What exactly is that?
Sure. So this is a no tax increase bond issue. School districts, almost every school district in St. Louis County, with the exception of one, has a debt service levy. That's a tax levy. It's already part of everyone's property tax bill. So part of your property tax bill goes to operating the schools, and then part of it goes to paying any debt that the school has. Debt service and bonds are really the only way for school districts to address their facility needs. The last time we issued bonds was in 2010. Those bonds are getting close to being completely paid off. Our debt service levy, and again, that's already part of the tax bill, it's a 36-cent tax levy. And we will be able to issue these new bonds if Prop S passes without increasing that 36-cent levy. In fact, we'll be able to decrease it by 7 cents, so it's projected to go down to 29 cents next year, and still be able to pay off these bonds. We also think that the interest rates have steadily gone down since we first came up with our projections in the fall. Right now, the interest rates are on average 1.65%, so about half of what we were paying on our existing debt and about half of what we were projecting back in the fall. So that's great news. It's is going to enable us to not only save interest, save taxpayer money, but we should also be able to pay out the bonds earlier. So instead of paying them off in 20 years, we potentially could pay them off in 17 years and hopefully sooner. But all this is within the existing tax levy that we have, so it will not be an increase. And again, in fact, it'll be a 7-cent decrease in the levy, and that's a savings of $43 for the average homeowner, $43 per year, and that's based on a house valued at $325,000.
Really, isn't it true, Mike, that this is the one mechanism available to school districts to either expand facilities or renovate facilities? I know Lindbergh is doing a lot of work right now, and they have done work in the past 2 years with the same mechanism.
Yeah, it's really the primary and in some cases the only mechanism that school districts have to address their facility needs. So all but one school district in St. Louis County has a debt service levy. So very common for school districts to issue bonds to be able to address their facility needs, and in fact to have a no tax increase bond issue. Most of the school districts in St. Louis County have had some sort of a no tax increase bond issue in the last 10 years. So it's a very common, it's the primary and maybe the only way that school districts can address their facility needs.
Just to pull up a little photo, a caption, if you will, of our schools, our elementary schools, and the year they were opened, as well as the size and the years that they were added onto, as you can see from this graphic. Now Robinson was being built in 1929, but it didn't officially open until 1930. All of our schools are at capacity except Tillman, and they have one classroom left. So just a little bit of information there, and the acreage that they're actually sit on as well. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that, but you can see the multiple years, and most of the years that you see here, those are the years that bond issues were passed that added on to or enhanced or improved those buildings.
I think one of the takeaways that you can have from a graphic like this is when you look at the bottom line of each of those buildings, and they each say at capacity, except for Tillman has one classroom left, because we've often gotten the question, why don't we just redistrict? Won't that solve all of the problems? And redistricting really is redrawing those attendance boundaries to look at which school a student would go to based on where they live. And you can see that if we try to do just an even split of all 5 elementary schools and just say we're going to put the same number in each building, they would be approximately 540 kids in each of those elementary schools, which is basically what Westchester is at right now. And Westchester is at 100% capacity and has kids in the hallways receiving extra support, kids in the hallways getting reading and math intervention. They're looking at creative ways to do art and music next year where we're running out of space. So even just redistricting and evening out each of those buildings still doesn't address the needs that we have for our students. And the students that we have in those hallways that are watching kids walk by as they're struggling with reading or they're struggling with math, that's not good for their social emotional health either. So when we look at redistricting, we look at that as a way to, again, kind of balance out some of the buildings and look at what those capacity opportunities are. But as you can see, we're at capacity for 4 out of our 5 buildings in Tillman with 1 classroom available. I know that classroom has served as a meeting room, a conference room, a place where kids can go to get some extra help. So it's not just sitting there, it's being used quite frequently for lots of things because other spaces have been taken away to address student needs, where we used to have spaces where kids might be able to get one-on-one or one-on-two speech therapy, for example. Sometimes those kids are now either in a closet or they're in a hallway. We've had kids in stairwells doing some of their orchestra pieces because there is no space for them in their classrooms. So the takeaway I have from that, not just that we have buildings that have been around for a long time, they are beautiful buildings though and have been maintained very, very well, but that we are at capacity for each of those buildings. They were not built to hold more than the kids that they have. And Glendale, as an example, is at one point just in the last 10 years was under 400 students and now is over 600. And so that building is just packed. And so we have to think about creative opportunities and we have to look at everything. And it's exciting to think about being able to provide our kids a new opportunity in a new elementary school to be able to kind of stretch out a little bit and open up our educational opportunities.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about, I know that it'll be great for the programming at all the other elementary schools as well. And so, and I think we mentioned Robinson could go down to 450, 480,
Yeah.
Which would make Robinson alleviate a lot of the problems and provide opportunities for them.
Correct.
Because Robinson is a great school and has, it's a beautiful building and beautiful instructional spaces there. Does anybody want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. I toured Robinson recently, was in the building and visiting classrooms, and there was a small group reading instruction happening in the hallway as I walked by. And these are students who were learning about phonics and letter sounds and really having to be attuned to those very discrete skills. And you know, we've got classes walking down the hall, which is very distracting, particularly for our little ones when they're having to focus on skills that are that minute and that important.
One of the questions we had the last time was also that we haven't seen this afternoon from our viewers is what are we going to do about next school year? Because the improvements and the add-ons and additions will happen over the summer, but the new school will not come online until 22-23 school year. So what are the plans for, as we can see from this graphic, the overcrowding at some of our schools for next school year?
Well, we're going to have to be creative. We're going to have to look at all of our schools. And for example, at Westchester, we're looking at converting the principal's office and counselor office that are next to each other into a smaller classroom. And then you can move or potentially like a smaller classroom at Westchester in there, like the gifted classroom, which would then free up a full-size classroom because they have a large kindergarten classroom coming in next year, and they're going to need additional space. So we just have to take a really close look and be as creative as possible. But we know that that a lot of what we're doing is going to have to continue for another year just because we don't have the space. So so some of that small group instruction will have to continue where it's at.
And you know, not to, we really need to distinguish between what's being used as instructional spaces, because I will say most of our schools at this point, our elementary schools, no longer have teachers' lounges, and the principals are sharing one office at this point. So we're not talking about using space for frivolous things like having your own office space, which some might not even see as frivolous, but we're talking about taking spaces that would be nice out of the picture and really using every space for instructional space.
And I think people misunderstand sometimes what a teacher workroom, teacher lounge is as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and what
really,
a principal's office is used
right.
for.
A teacher workroom, you know, lounge is a term that really doesn't express what happens in that space. And so a teacher workroom is often where copies get to be made, where tests get graded because there's other things going on in classrooms. Teachers can meet and collaborate. Teachers can have lunch and be able to talk and have those meetings. It really is a workroom. A lot of times there's a die cut machine or there are other tools for student engagement, student instruction. So yeah, the old mindset of there's nothing but couches in there, people are just sitting there having a good time is definitely not what's occurring at all. In fact, if teachers are in there for more than 10 or 15 minutes, it's very unusual. It's kind of a pit stop. But it really is a workspace for teachers to come and get some of the things that they need that aren't stored in their classrooms or aren't stored in their closets. And in some cases, because of the space needs that we have, we've had to move other things into other spaces. At Westchester, they've had to kind of separate their workroom into multiple spaces where there's paper in one place and some of the other tools that they need in other places.
And I know many people in the corporate world work in shared offices and shared spaces, whereas when you're talking about a principal's office,
you need to have some of that privacy. Imagine a student who's in crisis and you have to bring them in. And as the principal, if my assistant principal is then also working with a student in crisis, we can't be in the same space. We have to be able to give our kids the space they need to decompress, the space they need to express their feelings, the space they need to learn and grow and develop. And if we're sharing spaces with multiple people, and it's not just principals, we've got therapists and social workers and counselors all in one space as well. And I know if I'm a student and I'm having an emotional issue that day, and I have a trusted adult, I may not feel as comfortable sharing that if there are 4 or 5 other adults in that space because they have nowhere else to be. It also makes group therapy very difficult. It makes group counseling or group speech therapy, as a matter of fact, just very difficult for our students because they need to have a sense of privacy and a sense of trust. So yeah, principal's office also, you have to have meetings with parents. You have to have a chance to have that privacy and have that separation. And if you're sharing that space, you really have nowhere that you can come and meet with those parents and engage and have those discussions. So our principals are very much about supporting the teachers, and so giving up their space so the teachers can have space for their kids is their priority, and our kids are the #1 priority. But it does make the job very difficult to do if you don't have space. There's confidential information that a principal has to keep as well, and we need to have space for that. So there are just a lot of things that we don't always think about until we don't have that space anymore. And I know our principals are being, again, we're being very creative to find spaces that we need, and what we would love to do is be able to use the space that we have in creative ways, and let our kids learn and grow and expand with the wonderful programming we can offer. So we're working with what we have, but our kids deserve better than that.
That's right. When you think of Kirkwood schools, I think we think of, high quality schools. People are moving to Kirkwood really so that their kids can attend our schools. And when we think of high quality programming, we think of having spaces to implement some of those innovative practices and that innovative instruction that is proven to be effective with the variety of learners that we're getting in our schools today. So we really owe it to our kids to provide them with the opportunities that they would receive in school districts around our area and around the country.
All right. Anything else that we haven't covered that we want to add? I think everybody that's on right now has been on the whole time. So I think we pretty much covered all the information. Once again, don't hesitate to go to kirkwoodschools.org/prep-s to gather additional information. Anything we want?
We talk about the misconception that this is a bubble. Was that discussed?
We talked briefly about projections and the move-ins.
Yeah.
You want to cover that again because you've got some great.
Yeah, I mean, we hear sometimes when we're in some of our community forums that this, and I know Mr. Romay talked about it, this is an enrollment bubble, that building a new school is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And we can address a couple of those things. When we look at our data in Kirkwood, we've had 12 years up till this point of enrollment growth, and we're projecting at least another 5 years of enrollment growth. So when we're talking, it's not a bubble, it's a trend, and it's been, at least when we include projections, 17 years of data that we can base some of those decisions on. And again, we've seen growth in all of our buildings and growth in our elementary, middle, high. We do have transfers in quite frequently. Students will transfer in. We average about 140 transfers in per year. So those were students that were not either born in the Kirkwood School District or didn't start either in kindergarten or weren't there the year before. So we're getting new students each year that are coming in and joining our amazing school districts. This year, however, it's a little different. We've had almost 270 transfers in. When we take all the transfers in and subtract all the transfers out, we're up about 270 kids just from transfers this school year. So those wouldn't be captured on a projection that we have. So we have to build some of those pieces in. The other thought about a permanent solution to a temporary problem, I know that even with 6 elementary buildings, with our current enrollment, we'd be looking at about 480 kids in each of those buildings. Even if we lost 500 elementary kids, we would still be close to 400 in each building, which is still higher than some of our buildings were just 5 to 8 years ago. And I know our instructors and our teachers are so amazing that they would always find a use for all the space that they have in their buildings. And if they have opportunities to have STEM labs or maker spaces or more exploratory project-based learning, and they have space opportunities for that, they will always take advantage of that. So I am not concerned that we would have a building that isn't going to have capacity or isn't going to have enrollment in there for several years. I think that just based on 17 years of data, 12 historical and 5 projections, we would have a robust building going on with great instructional opportunities. And our teachers are amazing, and they would use the space that they have. They're currently using space they don't even have to provide instruction. So imagine if they had spaces for their students to stretch out and grow and learn and develop. I think that we would see some amazing things happening. It's a very exciting opportunity for our kids.
I think what's different about the enrollment that we're seeing, which is longitudinal enrollment growth. In the past, we might have seen one class of kids or two classes of kids, maybe that might be larger than they had over the past. Or we might see an exit from one of our local private schools because of change in math curriculum or a new principal. But the data that we're seeing right now is different from those little blips and data that we had seen in the past. I think the word that you use, trend, is much more accurate in the description of that current enrollment growth.
Right. And even when we talk about birth rate, over the last 10 years, birth rate's gone down 7 times nationally, and yet our enrollment has been higher every year than it was the year before. So that birth rate piece isn't necessarily impacting the enrollment we have in Kirkwood. We are just seeing more and more kids show up, and you can't blame them. We've got amazing schools and amazing staff and amazing teachers, and our parents are moving here expecting the best, and that's what we want to provide.
All right, I'm going to show a quick little video about Robinson because we talked a lot about Robinson today, and I'm going to try and bear with me that I do this the right way.
You know, I think we will feel it right away just because of the breathing room. We won't have to see kids who are working in the hallways with getting some small group instruction in the hallway. I would love to see kids getting that more intense instruction in a quiet space. Really, our biggest issue right now is how many kids we have in our building. And so with the option going on the April ballot, the new building, that will alleviate the number of kids we have in our building. We have 512 students right now, K through 5. Whereas 10 years ago when I started, we had about 425. And so we've seen a big increase in just those 10 years. We're very tight. You'll see there's not a lot of space that's not being used. We have kids working in the hallways, we have teachers working in closets, we have counselors working in closets. It's just not conducive. We can do better. So we are creative with our spaces, but it would be really nice to have enough space to let the kids be the ones who are creative. This was a custodial office, and then we needed the space, so we just painted it and hung some stuff up on the walls, and now it's a space for some counseling. Okay, this room it's been a hallway, part of the hallway. It's been part of a classroom. It's had a door to the teacher's lunchroom, and now we're using it as a classroom space. Just so super fun. We've got this thing that sticks out. We don't know why. I have 256 boys, and I have 5 restrooms. That's 51.2 boys. Okay, that's so gross. Lunches have to start at 11 o'clock when we have kids eating until 1:40, because we have to have separate lunches for each grade level because they're so big. That's hard. That's a late lunch. And so then you've got kids with a really long morning and then a very short afternoon after lunch. And so, you know, ideally, if we had fewer kids, if we had fewer number of classroom sections, we could condense some of our lunches. We have people all the time who are looking at houses, and they come and look at our schools. We have people who tell us we bought a house to be in Kirkwood. We want to be in Kirkwood schools. And so, yeah, I think definitely the word has spread about how awesome we are, and people want to be here. And we're feeling that in these buildings. So if I had the flexibility with fewer kids, fewer sections, I could do some things differently with where people are working. And I think that would be better for kids.
Thank you. I love that video. It really tells the day-to-day story of what's going on in our schools. Do we have any other questions from our participants?
We do not have any other questions. So at this time, if we don't have any other questions, I think everybody's been on with us most of the time.
That's great. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in about a week with another Power Hour. If you have friends who are curious or interested, please have them join us next week or visit our website. There are lots of really good information on that site. And in the meantime, take care and take care of each other.
kirkwoodschools.org/PropS. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.